I think everybody should play solo. That I do think, but not on piano necessarily. It should be on your instrument, whatever you're playing. Um, because especially these days in the world that we live in, post a lot of rules, you can anything is solo. So there are these great recordings by Evan Parker or Sam Newsom or Steve Lacy or Sonny Rollins that are solo. Oh yeah, I guess I said everybody. Those are a lot of the main solo saxophonists, and then of course there's solo guitar. There was a big record. There was a long record that was released this year by a guitar player named Miles Okazaki, where he played every single Monk tune in a kind of interesting way. So in a sort of free-ish kind of modern, well not free-ish, but compositional, but it was anyway a very modern approach to those Monk things that wasn't particularly coming out of Monk. But anyway, there's a great solo bass record by Dave Holland that I like a lot called Emerald Fury. So so I think playing solo is an important thing. And it's interesting to think about all the things that playing solo can be. It can be very orchestral and a kind of sort of perfect thing that proceeds from idea to idea. Or it could just be kind of an improvisational thing where you just have this moment and different things happen in it. I have to say my own solo direction that I've been sort of working on is to play these tunes a little bit more like, so I was thinking, hello, Paul.
Hey, Dave.
How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Who's the idiot who organized this?
Me. The same person responsible for getting my suitcase from Newark to here, apparently. Anyway, so I've been thinking a lot about solo piano playing, and one of the things I'm really interested in is this idea that when you're playing a tune, that anything could happen, that it could change keys, that it could change tempos, that, one of the things I really like, there are two solo things that I would say have influenced me a lot. One of them is a recording of Bill Evans. How many people know this recording? It's the Bill Evans playing on Nardis is the song, Nardis.
I know it.
And it's from Paris Concert 2.
Yeah.
So it's this really extended piece that kind of sounds like a theme and variations on Nardis. He plays about 7 minutes in front of the band on this thing. And that's one thing that's really influenced me a tremendous amount. And then another thing I really like is the Goldberg Variations by Bach. Now I wouldn't say that what I'm doing is necessarily on that level, although, on a good day you can hope. But I do like that idea that in jazz we're often doing a kind of theme and variations on a tune. And I'm sort of less interested in the performance as like a sort of a perfect kind of orchestral architecture. And I'm more interested, okay, now this happens, wait, this is another way you can approach this too. So that's a work in progress. Next month I'm going to be doing a week of solo gigs in Japan. So that's I'm looking forward to that. And one of the things that's very interesting in solo playing is, for all of us, we all play solo all the time. I mean, if you're practicing, right? So when you're practicing, you're usually playing solo. But it's very different to think of that as actually a performance piece, as opposed to just this is me without the other instruments. So that's an interesting thing. And so having 6 or 7 gigs in a row at different venues is something I'm really looking forward to. Because whenever I do a lot of solo gigs, I always feel like things are changing and I'm sort of getting used to what the space sounds like. I used to play a solo gig for a long time in New York City at a club which doesn't exist anymore. And it was a really beautiful room and a beautiful space. And I always used to consider that one like even though it was solo, I was always thinking, it's not really solo, it's like duo with silence, right? Which is, I'm not saying that to be slightly humorous. What I really mean is, it really is like that. You can decide, in fact, a lot of times, because I've been doing these solo concerts in Brooklyn at this kind of gallery space, and a lot of times I'll just force myself to stop and just like play with just my right hand, like leave the left hand out. And so much of solo, there's such a structure and there's so much history for solo piano playing. I think we always, you want to not be a slave to that history necessarily. And I'm really interested in being able to kind of progress in some kind of storytelling fashion. So that's the solo stuff. Now, here's the trio. Yeah, that's bad planning.
Let's
You mind
talk
if I-
about playing trio now.
No, I think, let me play this, a couple of tunes solo, and then you guys will come back and do that. Do you mind
No problem.
not being utilized efficiently? Your time is not being treated with the deference that it should be, but, yeah. I'll play a couple of solo things, and then
we'll bring these guys back.
Wow. Yeah, your vocal mic's definitely in the monitor.
Yeah. That's more authoritative that way. You see, if I'd said the whole thing through this microphone, it would have had a much bigger impact on you. Anyway, this solo record that I'm getting ready to record in April in Minneapolis, of all places, is it's going to be the music of John Coltrane and Pete Seeger, because I thought that was a good combination. Pete Seeger, if you don't know who he is, he's an American folk singer. He wrote "We Shall Overcome," and he does a lot of Woody Guthrie songs. So I've been playing some Woody Guthrie songs and some Coltrane tunes back to back. So I'll do that for you. I like these sets of 2 tunes. So the first tune I'm going to do is a Coltrane tune called "Lazy Bird," and the second tune is a Woody Guthrie song called "There Are Mean Things Happening in This Land." One nice thing about doing folk music, incorporating folk music into it. And one of the things I like about that combination is actually the tune I'm going to play actually is a little more, for a folk song, it has a lot of chords in it. But one of the nice things about doing Pete Seeger tunes and Coltrane tunes back to back is the Coltrane tunes have a lot of chords and the Pete Seeger tunes have 3 chords. So that's nice. Anyway, these are those 2 tunes. You guys want to stand there, or do you want to? Either way.
I'm gonna go do some homework.
You want great papers? I'll try and keep it to it.
Thank you. That was exciting when the mic fell in, right? Sort of scared the crap out of me. So that was 3 tunes. That was a folk tune in the middle and 2 Coltrane tunes on either side. Lazy Bird finished with Equinox. And now let's bring up the band. Great to play Steve and Paul again, and we're going to, yay, you can clap for them. Show them some affection, even though you see them all the time and you probably have a lot of issues. Let's play this tune. To continue in the Coltrane mode, hey, do you have a spare first page of one of those? That moment's notice?
I do.
Can you hand it to Paul, who will hand it to me?
Yeah.
So this is part of all that Coltrane stuff. I was going to do a Coltrane. You know, I have many ideas that never come to fruition. I know. Unlike all of you guys, who everything you ever think of to do, you always realize perfectly. I, unfortunately, am a human being and flawed. So I had a plan to do a Coltrane solo record, and then I didn't have quite enough. And then I had a plan to do a Pete Seeger record. And so that's how that genius plan came together. Anyway, when I was working on that Coltrane stuff, I thought, you know what would be good for Moment's Notice would be if I put a whole lot of harder chord changes in there, because other than that, it's a very easy tune. So anyway, this is a reharmonization I did of Moment's Notice.
It goes like this. A little bit like this. And the ones that are in parentheses, you see those?
Yeah?
You don't play them on the roll.
Yeah, that's what.
So-
I can't do them that small anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So you have like D flat minor 7 flat 6 in bar 14.
Bar 14.
D flat minor 7 flat 6.
Yeah.
That goes for 2 bars. You know what? That's not clear. Do you have a pen? Does anybody have a pen?
I do. I came
If I had a
with
pen,
a
I
couple
would
of
give
pens.
you some bar lines.
And that's what the Masterclass is about.
About it.
Always have a pen.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Steve Altenberg's Masterclass coming up. The title is Always Have a Pen. You're gonna really want to pen that one.
You can watch it online, yeah.
So what, this chord is never?
No, just not.
Oh, it's a head chord. Oh, new bars here. Oh, right.
Okay.
Then don't let anybody walk off with your pen.
You know, that's a pretty, it's kind of crummy pen, actually, I have to say.
Well, I have another one in my bag. Always have a backup.
Okay. There it goes.
The last one is voicing.
So no,
Then the book takes like
it's too late.
Yeah, if it was written so bad that it came out on it.
That too, yeah. Well, but just to make it show where the 8 bars fall.
That'd be good too.
Yeah. But it's okay.
It could be sort of pedally or whatever. Come on, dude. Come on, dude.
Moment's Notice with hard chords. Called. So I thought I would do, this is a tune I've been playing that I like. As opposed to some of these tunes I've been playing I don't like. Which is really a drag. I gotta stop doing that. This is a tune by the guy who wrote Just in Time. So if you know, how many people here know and like Just in Time? That's a smattering. That's a healthy smattering. So this is a tune that's a little bit like Just in Time. So if you want to learn a new tune, but you don't want to commit to learning a completely different tune from a whole lot of tunes that you already know, this is one that's kind of similar to Just in Time. At least I think that. You can tell me afterwards. It's called Bye Bye Baby. And it has a little added extension that I threw on there. It is 8 bars.
And it's just AAB vibe.
It's A, B, A, C.
Where's the repeat?
Repeat is at the very end of the song.
Oh, okay, so the A's are 8 bars then.
Yeah, it's 8 bar A, then an 8 bar B, then the A comes back, and it's the exact same amount of time.
Yeah, I got you.
And then there's an ending, but I stuck on some extra.
Yeah, on the 7th bar.
Yeah, so it ends up being longer. Yes, longer. An indeterminate amount of bars longer. We don't have the mathematical skills to figure out precisely. Anyway, this is Bye Bye Baby. One, two, three, four. baby. Paul Berner, Steve Altenberg, thank you very much for coming and playing tunes. Yeah, I think, so I'm going to do this hour presentation I did at a conference about harmony in 11 minutes. And so I'll pass on the last tune. Give it up for these guys one more time. Let's have a couple more woos, more enthusiastic woos. It's not a country bar. You want to walk that fine line between woo and hoo-wee. You have to be careful. Nothing good. There's a saying in the U.S., nothing good ever happened after you heard that hoo-wee. Okay, so the main reason I did this was so I could show yet another picture of my book. That's it. Anyway. Why study harmony? Let's skip over all that. Okay, so the only thing I really want to say about all this, I'm going to condense rapidly, because there's one thing I kind of do want to talk about, that a lot of people are focused on, particularly in the last 20 years, jazz has been really focused on rhythmic complexity as we integrate more world musics like Eastern European rhythms and Indian rhythms and things like that. Skip through all that. But in the past, harmony was really pushed forward. I mean, harmony was kind of the thing that was moving jazz forward. So when you go from the swing era to bebop era, what you're really hearing is a lot more harmonic innovation. Things like half steps, Coltrane changes, all that kind of stuff that happens in the late 60s. Harmony was a real driver of the different musical eras in jazz. So this is the part I really want to talk about. As you can see, I'm skipping over all that other stuff. So what I'm really interested in, you've heard me talk about it before, but you'll hear me say it again. And what I'm really thinking about is how do you learn a standard? First of all, let me say why you should learn standards. And the reason you should learn standards is because it's a different kind of harmony. Harmony moves in a different way in standards. The chords aren't so important in a standard. Let me explain what I mean by that. For standards, there's an underlying harmonic structure that's like the structure beyond the individual chords. So I may have a song like I just did on Bye Bye Baby, which if I was really slick, I would put up, but I'm not. So I'm just going to hold it here, and you'll just have to take my word for it. The first four chords are B flat to G7 to C minor to F. That's a turnaround. I could have played any number of different turnarounds, and you know what? Had Paul played these changes, and I'd varied those changes, if we were both functionally on the same page, meaning if we were both using changes that had the same rough approximate function, then it would work out fine. And the fact that we were on slightly different harmony wouldn't really much matter. One time I came and did a class about all the different ways that Bill Evans plays 2/5s, which is a pretty specific thing to do. But it's interesting because the thing is, when you see a 2/5, when you see C minor to F in the key of B flat in a standard, people who interpret standards, which are all of you, but the more experience you have doing it, you're going to have a whole lot of options at your disposal when you see that. You can think of it, so we're looking at C minor F going to B flat. You could look at it just as an F7 chord. In fact, a lot of bebop horn players will tell you that they don't think of the two chords, they only think of the fives. Well, that's valid, but it's also not, if I play that, if I leave out the 5 then as a comper, that changes the mood. There's something that having the 2 chord in there does. I could play, instead of C minor to F, I could play G flat 7 to F. Or I could play E flat to F, and that would sound a little bit more like a rootsy kind of blues maybe. But whatever I chose to play, I have all these options. I could play C minor to D minor to E flat major to F7. That's another way I could walk up the scale. So my point is that most of us learn harmony from the iReal book or something similar. The chords of the tune are presented to you. If if I bring in a tune and you don't know it, and I'm going to show you the chords, and it's going to be a chord progression. But really, there's like a more basic structure to the harmony than any particular chord progressions. There's the deep structure to the harmony. Okay, that's the point I'm trying to make, to skip all this stuff. I talked about my dad, and I talked about being from Cleveland. Anyway, you can take me out to dinner, and I'll tell you all about my dad in Cleveland. This is not my dad. musically, I could say he's one of my dads. It's Hank Jones. Hank Jones with Dutch subtitles. How do you like that? Talk, Hank. No, really? No. Go. Really? Oh, why is that doing that? Play? He was playing before, yeah.
There's a,
There you go. Yay.
Harmony that most people don't realize.
What song is he playing?
This example
How High the
I'm going
Moon.
to use to illustrate the point is how a melody can be changed over time. Now, this particular tune, this tune called How High the Moon, has become sort of like a musician's Bible.
Does anybody know how that song goes? What's the first chord change? G major. What's the second chord change in the second bar? G major still. 2 bars of G major, then 2 bars of G minor. That's not what Hank played. And his point isn't even, hey, I'm going to reharmonize How High the Moon. His point is, he was really talking about ornithology. And he's saying, we could write different melodies over the same chord changes. But whenever you hear one of these old videos where there's like if you listen to the Bill Evans videos, or when Barry Harris, there's always a bunch of Dutch people standing around Barry Harris in those videos on YouTube because Franz Elza of The Hague recorded him repeatedly. Anyway, whenever you hear one of those guys doing that, an older piano player playing through the changes of the tune, invariably they don't just play the real book changes. So it's interesting. I found this video when Hank Jones died. I was actually teaching here the day he died, and so then I was looking for Hank Jones videos to play, and this video came up, and I was listening to it. I was like, wow, those are pretty kind. It's kind of slick what he played on How High the Moon, and he's just demonstrating the tune so that he can play ornithology over it. So here's what he plays. It's not working right. Okay, so here's what he plays. You can't see it very well, but if you can, the bottom changes, the G major change. Oh, can I do this? Does this work? Oh yeah, look, how's that? It's nice. So the G major change, this is the real book changes, and these are what he plays. He plays G major to a kind of pedal D back to G major. Then here he has this little line cliche. He plays G major 7 to G minor 7 to C7 instead of the G minor chord. Here, instead of just playing sitting on the F major, he plays F major, sharp 5. And then he replaces this F major with a D minor, and he has a secondary dominant that precedes it. And you know what? The second chorus, he does something different. So that's really interesting. Like if you compare how he plays the changes, which I'll play for you. So these are the regular changes, the real book changes. Those are the real book changes. Here are his changes. Substitute change, the D minor substitute, he leaves that out. He just goes straight to F, like the tune usually goes. And so it's different every time. The second ending also, he adds some stuff. So that's what Hank Jones plays. Now, to me, there's a lot of nice little details in what Hank Jones did. Some of this is going to be sort of age dependent. Like he sounds like an older piano player to me, and that's what that is. He plays a certain kind of harmony that's really rich. in things like secondary dominance and diatonic substitutes and lines in the tenor voice, these kind of line cliche lines. But he also has some nice use of modal interchange chords. The point is, and this is really the main point that I even want to make for this whole thing, is that there's a deep structure to How High the Moon. And so that means that da-da-da-da-da, that happens over a G, that's tonic. So I immediately have a bunch of options. I could replace that tonic chord with another tonic chord. So if I'm thinking like this, in this way, okay, I just replaced it with a 6 minor chord. So that's a possibility. The next bar is either going to be G major or something leading to G minor. So that would mean that could be a kind of 5 of G minor maybe. That might be something like... that would be better. So all I'm doing is there's a kind of possibility to dealing with standards where the whole world of harmonic substitutes comes into play. So in this case, I have these things that I can use, these harmonic processes. Harmonic processes are here. So basically, what functional harmony means is that you have 1, 4, and 5. You have this sort of tonic, subdominant, and dominant that are important points in the song. And then these other circles are all things that I can add to that. So I can replace 1, 4, and 5 with diatonic subs. That means replacing the 1 chord with the 3 or the 6, replacing the 4 chord with the 2 chord, replacing the 5 chord with the 7 chord if I want. I can lead to those with secondary dominance. So I can have, if I have let's say, I've replaced the 1 with a 6, but then I can proceed it with the 5 of that chord. So then I have modal interchange chords, and modal interchange chords are chords that are borrowed from another mode, but they have a 1, 4, or 5 like function in the key. You don't have to follow absolutely everything I'm saying, although I'm sure a lot of you can. I'm talking fast, and that's always problematic. But my point is that once you have some kind of fluency with this, it gives you a lot of options. The way I started thinking about this was, there are certain songs that I've played for a lot of years. I just turned 60 about like a week and a half ago, so I'm really old. Thank you for clapping for my longevity. Anyway, what was the point of that? Oh yeah, I've been playing some of these songs a very long time. And I noticed when I was playing Body and Soul, how many people here know the chord changes to Body and Soul? Raise your hand. Excellent, good group. That was a big smattering. Okay, so Body and Soul, the first 4 changes are this. Oh, I can use this thing. That's why this thing is here. Can you hear me? Okay, let me put that there. How about that? No, now you can't. How about now? Okay, that's good. I feel like Karen Carpenter. Okay, so Body and Soul usually goes like this. So the first chord is E flat minor. Well, let's say I start on E major. Well, that's a passing chord to E flat minor. Let's say I start on F. That's a secondary dominant of the B flat 7, which is the second chord. Let's say I start on G flat. G flat is a diatonic substitute for E flat minor. G minor. That's the beginning of a sequence. How about A flat? That's what Coltrane does. He starts on a pedal. How about A7? The A7 leads to the B flat. B flat. I can make it into more of a pedal. How about B? Well, that's a half step away from the B flat that's coming. Okay, C minor is the 2 of F7. What's left? D flat major. That's a hard one, actually. Oh, well. I can just put it as the pedal of the, oh, whatever. Anyway, you get the idea. My point is that you can actually start on any chord and go in a logical progression to another chord. If that's the case, how come we're so stuck on these chords? Like, how come still I'm going to play, hopefully I have at least 5 or 6 years left. And, I'm probably going to play buy and sell a bunch more times in that period. And everyone's still going to start on E flat minor. So my point is that when you learn these tunes, when you learn standards, you want to learn where the harmony is going. Try not to learn the tune by thinking of what the chord change is. Try to learn the tune by thinking of where the harmony is headed. So, it's an interesting process because teaching harmony classes and writing a harmony book and coming here and talking to you guys about harmony and whatnot, that's made me really think a lot about my understanding of how harmony works. And I find it really interesting and a personal challenge to try and free myself of some of those things, those tendencies that we all have. Oh, wow, I'm over. I thought I could do this in 11 minutes. You can't do a whole hour presentation in 11 minutes. I found that out. It takes 14. Okay, so, but that's my point. You want to get comfortable with these harmonic processes, and you also want to know these tunes. Nowadays, when I learn a tune, what I do is, and I do this when I'm brushing up on songs, because this week we have one of the tunes that was on the list was "Love Walked In," which is a pretty obscure standard. I don't play it often. I play it occasionally. So I was brushing up on that tune. And what I do now is I'll look at the lead sheet. I'll go and, if I have more than one lead sheet, I'll compare them. And then I'll get on YouTube and I'll find a bunch of different versions. If I can find a Keith Jarrett version, I know exactly how that harmony is or what type of harmony he leans toward. And then I'll listen to a couple of old versions, something with Frank Sinatra or Ella Fitzgerald or someone like that. And then but what I'm really trying to lock in on is this. What's the deep structure? Where is the harmony going? So in this case of How Deep the Moon, you have G major, and then it's a 2-5 leading to the F major area. And then I think about all the processes that I could use to work within this structure, but personalize the harmony in some kind of way. So that's the thing that I'm really interested in standards. And since that's all the time I have, I will stop now. But I look forward to hanging out with you and talking more about these tunes in the coming days. Thank you very much.